What's up, everybody? This is Allie, and you're listening to the Inside Out with Allie podcast. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Inside Out with Allie. I am so excited to introduce this next guest that I have here with me today. We've got Blue here. This is one of my friends and sisters that I met in Peru on a retreat called Warrior Retreats, where we spent 2.5 weeks, almost 3 weeks, traveling all over the country, exploring different pockets, different places. Blue, welcome to the podcast. So good to have you here. A little bit about Blue, for those of you who do not know her. She is a motivational speaker, an artist, a musician. She has a podcast, and she's the co-founder of a school called Florescence, which is a modern mystery school for women, which is something I'm super interested to learn more about. But yeah, basically, one of the things I want to share about Blue, this is one of the most inspiring women I've ever met. And, when we were in Iquitos, Peru, we were in the jungles and we got to do a plant medicine ceremony, a plant medicine called ayahuasca. And with this experience, what happens is you do see, you might hallucinate, you might see different things. And one of the things that I actually saw on this experience was an image of Blue. And I was laying down and Blue was grabbing my hand and she was pulling me up saying, "Come on, sister, let's go. It's time to step into leadership. It's time to step into your queendom. You've got this." And it was this pureness, this beautiful heart-centered sister pulling up another sister because she truly embodies love. She truly embodies wanting to see the empowerment of other women and is truly all about sisterhood. And so, this was my experience for on the whole trip, and leads me to my first question, Blue. You have this modern mystery school for women. I know a little bit, it's about empowering women to step into sisterhood and into their own power. But can you tell me a little bit more about the school, about your story behind how you got to building this school?
Well, thanks for the introduction, and I'm really honored and really grateful to be here and to be your second ever guest on your podcast. Really exciting. Congratulations for birthing this magical offering out into the world. May it touch the hearts and the minds and the souls of hundreds of thousands of people all around the world, and inspire them into their greatness through the magic and the wisdom that you share throughout this journey. So I'm really, really honored to be here. Thank you so much. And yeah, wow, it's been a journey. I can tell you that from a place of empowering women and seeing the magic in them and creating curriculums and online trainings to support women to really step into their truth, to find their voice, to really align with their power, has also come from a journey of not being empowered, of not understanding what it is that I'm here on the planet to do, of not understanding what it means to be a woman with the Stargate Enterprise between our legs from one dimension to the next. I didn't understand the power of this. I had to completely be blinded from it to then actually be able to step into my power and then therefore support other people. So it's been a journey to get to this point. However, I think what really sparked it was to be in the presence of other empowered women when I wasn't empowered, and to witness them in their truth, to witness them, the way that they danced or moved their bodies or would flow with the music, or the way that they would make eye contact really strong while they were in conversation, or the way that they would hold their spine straight and their heart forward while they're being strong and soft simultaneously, the way that they would adorn themselves with their clothes and the shawls or whatever it was. I remember being in the presence of empowered women and going, oh, that's what it feels like for a woman to know her worth. I can feel it in the presence of, and then what that would do is highlight within me all the areas that I wasn't really fully stepping in. Now, there's two choices in that. I could be intimidated. I could compare myself. I could put myself down, make myself less than, and place a pedestal on that person, which is actually a dishonoring of myself and them, because it's basically saying that this is who you are and you can't be anything outside of that because I'm putting you on a pedestal. And also it's making me less than because I haven't fully stepped into my own authentic truth. Now, the other option is to utilize this reflection as inspiration and go, wow, that's what it looks like for her to be in her truth. I can do that too if she can do that as well. And through her reflection, I'm going to step into my own unique groove and lane and my own unique expression of that level of empowerment. Now, that's the two options that we have. Now, we have a deep-rooted sister wound, which kind of programs us to compare ourselves or to put another down or to say, well, if you're winning, then I got to lose, right? Which is a win-lose situation, recognizing actually when you win, I win. When you're in your power, I'm in my power. When you're in your power, there is a more beautiful world for my children and my children's children to live in because there is a woman living in her compassionate truth. So recognizing that there's two choices when we are in the presence of someone in their power. We either step in or we make ourselves less than. And what I've witnessed within you is that you stepped in, right? You and I got to play in the same field on the retreat. We got to sit in the same ceremonies. You got to sit in ceremony and have a vision of me coming over to you and pulling you forward. Now you could have gone, nah, I don't want to. Or you could have gone, I trust you. Let's go, and stand up and move into your power. And what you're doing, physically, what you're doing is you've gone, hey, Blue, you've inspired me with your podcast, what you've created, your journey, how you show up, how you speak, whatever it is that I have presented in your field of awareness that has inspired you. And what you've done with it is you've gone, I'm going to step in. I'm going to build my podcast. I'm going to find my groove. I'm going to get on my workout game. I'm going to find this juice in being single and like aligning myself with my own truth and packing myself with my own value. So what you've done is you've chosen option B. You've chosen the opportunity to actually step into your authentic essence and therefore create a more beautiful world that our hearts know is possible because you decided to live your life from a place of your full fuck yes. And so that, I believe, is what the journey is about, is of empowerment. Why I created this, I co-founded this experience with a dear sister of mine, Reggie River, because I believe that once we actually create a new default of empowerment, then the responsibility comes, then share it, then empower others, then uplift others, then reflect the beauty that you see in other people. So there becomes a responsibility. With great power comes great responsibility to actually then be of service from that place, but only from an authentic place, right? So what will happen is that as you continue to step into your groove, as you continue to step into your power, as you continue to fearlessly share your voice, as you continue to stand on stage and motivationally share and empower other people through your journey, what will happen is that seed of inspiration that was flicked between you and I now lives within you, and then you're going to now flick it to other people, and then they're going to step in and they're going to flick it to other people, and that's how it spreads. That's how empowerment, that's how beauty, that's how connection, that's how sisterhood, that's how unity is born, is from somebody saying, you know what, I'm going to use your reflection as an invitation for me to step into my greatness. And so I want to again acknowledge that I came to your mat in a vision while you were on ayahuasca deep in the Amazon jungle, tripped mold on one of the strongest hallucinogens on the planet, and, and you decided to put your action where your inspiration was, and that is the art of integration. So it's been a journey from disempowerment to empowerment. There's been many different intricate things that have happened for me and which I'm happy to break down. There's many to unpack. But I believe that when women really actually step into their power, find their authentic voice and listen to their intuition beyond any other voices in the world, they become very hard to control. And when we have women that are not very easy to control, then we have women that are giving birth to children that are not very easy to control. And then we have a new paradigm of how we weave through freedom on this planet beyond the societal expectations of controlling individuals and then them just sort of falling in line and taking a ticket and just regurgitating what they've heard from society. Now we have free thinking children, and then we have a kind of a revolution on our hands. So I'm here for it.
I love it. Imagine a world with free thinking children. Imagine that world.
I'm here for it. I'm here for it. Oh my gosh. The kids that are being born right now, their consciousness, like, they are so brilliant. They're so tapped in. We get to become the students of the next generation. If we think that we have something figured out and we got to tell them how to live, nah, we got it all wrong. They're our teachers. We're just keeping them safe while they learn how to navigate this like 3D realm. But they're coming in with a level of consciousness that is so far beyond what we can even comprehend. And so we've got to make sure that they get to stay in their magic without us all projecting onto them what we think they should be. It's just like, let them be free. Let them show us what it means to be connected with nature. Let them show us what it means to listen to our intuition. Let them be our teacher and us be our guardians so that they can weave on this planet in a safe way until they can start taking care of themselves.
Powerful. What do you think the shift is for this generation that's coming in? What's the difference?
I think the difference is there's like an inherited like a connection. Like it's almost like the intuition doesn't have as much static noise as or like generational suppression. So essentially our generation is still healing the trauma from the past generation. So we're healing our mother's trauma through us. We're healing our father's trauma through us. Where actually the next generation from the mothers that have actually done the work, have actually faced off with themselves, have actually gone deep into the subconscious mind and start to heal any shame, suppression, guilt, trauma, or inherited patterns. The next generation don't have to heal for the generation before. They're just healing for themselves. So if they come into an experience where the mother is supporting their magic and letting them listen to their intuition and letting them run around free in the forest and are being raised by their aunties and uncles and are remembering what it means to be in communion, then they don't have to actually go through 15 years of healing the past generation's trauma. They can go straight off from the start of being like, I'm here, I'm free, and I'm dowsing with the magic from the get-go.
Wow. That's a gift right there.
And it's also a responsibility as a woman. You know, every single person on this planet came from a woman. As a woman that has the ability to pull a non-physical being into a physical reality through the Stargate Enterprise between our legs, our yoni, our pussy, whatever you want to call it. It's like literally birthing a child that then the responsibility is as much trauma as I've healed is also the freedom that I'm giving this individual. So if I've not healed my own trauma, or if I have unconscious patterns, or if I have anger that lashes out, that child then will start to absorb that, and then it will go through another generation. And so there's a responsibility as a woman, as the gatekeeper from life, from non-physical to physical life. We must heal the deeper rooted wounds that we carry so that we don't pass it to the next generation. And that's our responsibility if we want to be a mother.
When, we're talking specifically about empowerment and, especially within, women to women, we've talked about there are, such things as these sisterhood wounds. How do we as women start this journey of healing on this path? Like, where do you start?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think even just bringing it into our conscious awareness that it's a thing, right? Like even knowing that, oh, wait, there's such a thing as like empowering ourselves, or there's such a thing as sister work, or there's such a thing as a sister wound. Like, what is the sister wound, right? Well, I'll tell you what the sister wound is most, if not all women listening to this will be able to associate with the sister wound is like the deep-seated feeling of competition between myself and other women, that if they win, then I don't, or if they are more brilliant than me, then they may attract the guy and I won't attract the guy, and it's my survival, like through my association with a partner, is where my deep-rooted survival comes in from. And then also like recognizing that there was a big wave of the witch hunt, and it's kind of like been passed over in the history textbooks that even happened, but there was like a mass killing of women that were connected to nature, of women that listened to the elements, of women that had a deep relationship with animals, of women that had like a deep relationship to the herbs and the healing properties of the medicinal medicines of plants. Like these women were cast out as witches, and the way that essentially they were conditioned to turn against each other was going, well, we won't kill you and your family for being a witch if you just let us know who are the witches in the village. So then it was like, oh, well, if I tell you that she's a witch and she's a witch and she's a witch, now my family's safe. So deep in our DNA memory, the memory in the core of our beings that didn't start with this lifetime, is the memory of having to, just to survive, you have to rat out your sister. Now, what this is doing is it's creating a very deeply rooted sister wound between women. And so it's survival of the fittest. And it's where actually one of our greatest gifts is sisterhood. One of our greatest gifts for our empowerment, for our evolution, for the way that we can truly come into fruition in this life, is having women in our corner that will speak our name in a room full of opportunities. Women that really have our backs, that are like right here with us. That hold us when we're down and celebrate us when we win and love us unconditionally no matter what, and really have each other's backs in this life. And that is one of the greatest ways that we can grow. However, we've got to move through this deep sister wound that says like, well, if she wins, then I'm going to lose. Or if she's in her power, then she's going to get the attraction of the man that I want. And it's just like, it's this competition that is actually sucking us dry of our vitality, when actually, if we support each other, we can win exponentially more. And so recognizing that there's a need for that medicine, that's when myself and Reggie decided to create this space, because we have devoted our lives over the past decade to learn tools and techniques and altar building, to healing our relationship with our finances, to understanding our astrology, to womb medicine, and to universal healing energy that moves through our hands, to spell casting, to word medicine, to writing songs and learning how to write medicine music, to activating our voices, to speaking clearly, to using media as medicine. Like, these are many different tools that we've cultivated over the last decade that we've action packed into a space that's gone, you know what? The world needs sisterhood. The world needs women supporting each other. The whole world will heal when women support each other. And this is a container that's going to hold that, to support women to really come into their magic and their power through a decade of tools and practices all in one space, while held in the accountability of sisterhood. So that's what Florescence is.
That's so juicy. Honestly, it's beautiful to hear a little bit more about this project, because first of all, I remember you were talking when we were in Peru, you were telling me your story, where you came from. I mean, you grew up as a young girl in sisterhood. So I feel like you've gotten such great experience in it. You've gotten to deeply know the meaning and importance of sisterhood. Not everyone gets to know that so early on in life.
Yeah, I was in boarding school. I first started boarding in a British boarding school at the age of 7 years old. And so I was sent away from home to go and live with my sisters. And I was placed in a boarding house. It's almost like Harry Potter. It's the best way to describe to Americans specifically, because a lot of Americans love Harry Potter. And it's like the best way to have a reference point, because it's very, very similar to Harry Potter in the sense that there was a boarding school and there was boarding houses. So there was like Gryffindor or Slytherin, but we had different names, obviously. But we had house colors, and we have our scarves with our house colors, and we'd all play different sports against the different houses. And it was a whole thing. We went on broomsticks, but we were still, in the competition with our house scarf colors on. And so I was in this boarding house called the Mitre. And the Mitre was a house with 54 women, girls, actually, like young girls. And all aging, the age range of over 5 years. But I was raised by 54 sisters. I was in sisterhood from a very, very young age. And, we would all gather in each other's rooms and pull pranks on each other. And we'd be there when, a sister was really going through a hard time. And we would laugh hysterically, and we would get drunk when we were not allowed to. We'd sneak alcohol in and get drunk in our room and be crazy and outrageous, and we just did all of those crazy things, as you do as a kid. And that was the foundation of my life, was that I was raised by my sisters. So it really locked this in a fundamental way, of the power of sisterhood and the importance of it. And also recognizing I got a training in from a really young age of interpersonal sisterhood relationships, of there's also going to be gossip, and there's also going to be people putting you down, and there's also going to be people ganging up on you, and there's that, all of that sort of stuff happens too. And how to really hold space for a sister that is going through a challenging time, and the best way to create a streamlining experience is never speak ill about anyone behind their back, otherwise it's going to come back and stab you in the side. So there's many different little things that I learned during that time. It wasn't a concept of me being a student and there being a teacher, but more so life as the teacher. And I got to learn the do's and the don'ts just from living for 5 years with my sisters.
Yeah. I mean, really important lessons. And my experience in the last, 10 years, my whole life really, but in the last 10 years, it's when I really started recognizing the importance of sisterhood and the importance of the type of women you have in your life and who you surround yourself with, and how much of a game changer that can actually be. And one of the things that I didn't realize when I was younger is that you can have people in your life, you can have women in your life, but there's a difference between having women in your, just women, and actual sisters. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. People who have your back. People who want to see you win, people who are cheering you on, people who are truly in your corner, who are your ride or dies and are with you till death do they part, right? Mm-hmm. And speak on what it means to build your sister circle to support us in our evolution.
Well, I think that's a really great point, in the sense of that not everyone's going to have you back, just not. And the more that you are in your power, the more that you are in your unwavering voice, the more that you are in your sexual expression or your sensual expression, the more that you allow your body to move and be the first one on the dance floor, the more unapologetic you are around your creative expression, it's going to trigger the fuck out of people. It just is. Because what it's going to do is, that's medicine in itself already. What it's going to do is going to highlight within others, specifically within sisters, but just in general within others, where they're not fully expressed. So your sexual expression or your sensual liberation is going to be triggering for anyone that is not in their own expression or their own power around that lane and that avenue. Now, recognizing like the 5 T's, as Rebecca Cohen taught me this: trust the trigger to teach. 5 T's. So the second that a trigger comes up, it's teaching us something. Now, based off of a lower level of self-awareness is going to be whether we reabsorb it as curriculum or we just project it out as to, oh, well, I just don't like her, she's a whore, right? Like that is a projection that you're not trusting the trigger to teach you. You're just projecting that the trigger is all of a sudden somebody else's fault. That's blame. That's the complete devoid of grace. Grace is the frequency where you do not have blame in your field. If you aren't blaming, you are completely releasing your grace out of your experience. So the trust the trigger to teach is an opportunity to recognize, oh, this woman is in her sexual or sensual power, empowerment. She's dancing the way, like, for herself, but like from this place of power. I'm super triggered by it. Now that's curriculum for me to recognize I have a deeper level of liberation to happen in that area of my life because I feel contracted. So recognizing that, yes, we're talking about sisters and having each other's back, and you're going to, when you're in your power, trigger the shit out of anyone that is not in their own. And it's not a time during that point to then go, oh, well, my expression's too much, I'm going to shut this down. Because newsflash, you're going to be judged and you're going to trigger people for the rest of your life. Yay! That's just inevitable. And the more you're expressed, the more you're going to trigger. Hey, it means you do something right. But the second that the trigger shows up is not the time to shut down your expression. That is actually the medicine that is needed. And so realizing that it is important that the discernment of who you choose as your immediate people, as your immediate reflections, are those that are in celebration of your expression, are in celebration of your life force, are in celebration of your unapologetic creative energy that is pulsing out of your body and your being and your voice and your expression in every moment, and that are there when you are broken down, that hold you in a beautiful place of unconditional love during those times. Now that is what sisterhood is. And that is not going to be everybody, because there's going to be a lot of people that are filtered out because they're triggered by you and your expression and do not want you to succeed because it makes them less than. But that's not yours to carry, right? It's not your fault. We'll keep singing, keep dancing, and it will filter out those that are not ready for your medicine yet. And that's okay. And I can count on one hand the women that I choose to have as my immediate reflections in my life. We have gone through thick and thin. We have died many ego deaths in each other's presence, and we have had each other's back no matter what. These are the women that I want around me that are affecting me, not women that are threatened by my light. There's a lot of power here, and I'm claiming it. There's a lot of power that's pulsing through me, and if my power intimidates you, then we're not necessarily meant to be mirrors just yet. And I love you as a sister from over here. And I won't speak bad about you, and I won't put you down, and I'm not going to put any misenergetic hygiene in contribute to the connection. I only speak of you in the highest, but my discernment goes, and I love you from over here until you're ready to take ownership of your life.
Yeah. You're not taking it personal. You're not taking it on as your own, and you're still operating in full integrity with who you are in your full power. That's so important. Mm-hmm. And it's so important that we as women allow ourselves to step into that power, own that power. It's having that discernment, and it's okay to create that space. There's this idea that we have to be friends with everyone. We have to maintain all the relationships we've ever had. We have to have it look a certain way. But in actuality, that discernment is more important now than ever.
Mm-hmm. And the discernment piece the invitation is based off of how it feels within the body. Right? Like our body keeps the score. Our intelligence in our body is so far beyond our mind, because our mind can project stories of past pain and past past hurt and like live in a future or past timeline. Or we've got to be really mindful not to believe all of our thoughts, because our thoughts can be tainted by past experiences. However, our body, whether it feels contraction or expansion, is always telling us that something's going on here much far beyond the mind. And that is the intelligence of deep inherent intelligence, is the ability to listen to what our body is saying and be so connected to our body that we actually start to hear the whispers of what she's expressing.
Thank you for sharing that, Blue. I want to pivot just a little bit because I do want to talk a little bit about purpose. One of the things I learned about you when we were together, you were like, I love my life. You live in this deep state of gratitude. You've built such a beautiful life with everything you're doing. And you're so impact driven. Like, you're all about how can I make a difference? And I want to talk more about that because you are one of the people that I see it to be really in purpose. And I want to talk about what it means to actually live a life in purpose.
Thank you. Beautiful question. Well, I think that first and foremost, the way to create the default of a beautiful life is to be at peace with the death process, is to be at peace, or to soften and surrender to when shit really hits the fan and life gets really uncomfortable. Because it would be completely bypassing that to live a beautiful life is just that life is great every single day, would be a complete injustice to the respect of the shadow nature. And recognizing that there can be, tomorrow something can blindside me and bring me to my knees and be like, oh my gosh, like it could be heartbreak, of like separating from a partner that you love deeply, or it could be losing a family member, or it could be, losing a limb, or a sense being dampened, these really big things that can happen in our lives that can completely blindside us and bring us to our knees, no matter where we're at in our journey, no matter where we're at in our spiritual evolution, that we are not immune from life happening and there being the exhale as much as there is the inhale. Now, within that piece, this is actually where the existential kink lives, is softening, trusting, and surrender when shit hits the fan, that this too is also sacred. Now, that is the unfuckwithable mindset, because when there is a deep level of trust in the uncertain, discombobulated, heartbroken, and distraught, and I still trust this, that is what's lacing the blessing to be presented of why it's happening. But when we fight it, when we think it's supposed to be different, when we blame our external world, when we are angry, when we project our internal pain onto the others, into our interpersonal relationship, this is when things get really sticky and challenging. And this is when we get caught in a cycle, in a very low level loop. So that, I think, is the foundational piece to build a beautiful life, is to trust in the really uncomfortable, deeply painful, discombobulating times as much as we trust the creativity, the love, the connection, the celebration, the dancing, and all of the beauty too. And so I believe that our capacity to feel the grief and the pain is also our capacity to feel the ecstasy and the love. And so as much as I allow myself to, like, before I went to warrior retreats, like I was like in a really deep death portal. I call it a death portal, based up like when everything's crumbling and I don't know what my next move is and I feel really unworthy. I was in that for 3 months, like really in it. And then when I actually started to heal and allowed to come back to my center and be surrounded by beautiful human and by connecting with nature and giving back, it really brought me back to myself. And then when I came back to myself, now my capacity over the last 3 weeks has been, oh my gosh, I'm back in my exercise and I'm feeling inspired and my creativity's back. And so the joy and like the excitement, because of the contrast, because I allowed myself to die, now all of a sudden it's so much bigger and it's so much more like exuberated and like, like really exciting, because of the capacity in which I allowed myself to die. And so I think that is the foundation for a beautiful life, of going, you know what? I mean, there's many different components to it, but to go, all right, well, I'm going to start doing the things that I love. I'm going to start listening to my heart. I'm going to actually start honoring the creativity that wants to come through me. I'm going to build the podcast of what I wanted to create. I'm going to share my stories. I'm going to stand on that stage courageously. I'm going to sing when my voice shakes, because I'm going to do it and move through fear. Those kind of decisions over a prolonged period of time creates a life of beauty, but it requires the ability to get uncomfortable to actually create a new foundation based off of life.
Right. So you're basically saying it's not looking at it as life is happening to us, it's happening for us, essentially. Even the most challenging of the challenging situations that come across our plate, it's easy to look at these as like, oh, this is bad, that this is happening, and this is terrible, but it's actually happening because there is space that needs to be created in order for us to bring in what is meant for us to step into that next evolution of the life that we actually want.
Right, like majority, like a lot of people, I mean, ultimately there's many different layers to it. There's environmental, there's like our upbringing, where we came from, the pieces that we had to work through, depending whether, you know, it's a very different experience if you're born as a white woman in America, as if you are born in a third world country, in a family of poverty or whatever. Like there's many different contrasting experiences of what we incarnated into. I can only speak on behalf of my own personal lane of my personal experience and the privilege that I've also had in my life, which is granted a massive advantage, I would say, because of the societal upbringing that I had. And so it is case by case. However, I have witnessed people that have come from really, really challenging environments, and they have come in with the mindset of, I am the creator of my reality, as opposed to I am the victim of my circumstances. And those people that have shifted the narrative from victim consciousness to creator consciousness have significantly evolved exponentially. Like, for example, Brandon, the founder of Warrior Trees. You know, he grew up in the projects. Like, he grew up in a very challenging environment. He didn't have his father around. His mother was, you know, his lifeline. And he grew up in very deep states of poverty and did not have education to support him, did not have healthy mentors, did not have leadership role models. And he had to create it for himself. But the difference of why I believe Brandon is who he is today, it's because he came in with the creator consciousness mentality, not victim consciousness. No matter what happened in his life, he was not a victim of it. He was the creator behind it. And now that's led him, and essentially his message is that he's come from the streets to the skies. Because that one shift of consciousness has allowed him, no matter what his circumstance, he has become the pioneer and the creator of it. And so that is true inspiration for me, is that no matter what your circumstance, you can become the creator of the reality in which you choose to create a life by design, no matter how much resistance is presented based off of external circumstances.
And what was the turning point for you? Like, when you went from, you know, you said you weren't always in your power. Tell us about that pivotal point in your life where you actually turned the tables and said, no, I'm going to live in purpose. I'm going to not be the victim. I'm going to be the victor in this.
So there was multiple pieces. One being, at the age of 16 years old, my mum introduced me to a book called The Secret. And I remember I was painting my bedroom at the time. I was 16, and I started listening to it on Audible, and it was telling me about how, like, our thoughts create things, and that we can actually create a life that we want if we so, like, become the power behind our thoughts. And I was like, wait, what? I hadn't even been introduced to that concept. I was like, but I was also, like, coming from a very immature material place, and I was like, wait, so if I think about a Range Rover enough, I can get a Range Rover. Like, this is what's happening. Like, if I just focus and I print out a Range Rover, you know, and I put it on my wall and be like, that's what I'm gonna have. P.S. I still don't have a Range Rover. What it did is it introduced the concept that we are powerful. Although our thoughts can actually hold a vibrational charge that emanate out into a vibrational reality, which can only bring more of what we're emanating, right? So that's when the seed got planted, but it wasn't. The biggest turning point for me was when I was sitting in the doctor's office going for like a regular hearing checkup, and I've noticed that my hearing was like getting worse. And I went with my brother, and the doctor basically had some really concerning results and shared with us that we would need to get checked over the next few months to witness the progression. But our hearing is not in a good place. It's in a concerning place. And over a 6-month period, we did a bunch of tests and checks, and basically what they shared with us is that we're both going deaf. It's hereditary, so it was a byproduct of a mutated gene between my parents, and that it's progressive, meaning it's getting worse, and it's completely incurable, that there's no cure of it. So basically, at the age of 23, I'm told that I'm going deaf, and there's nothing I can do about it. And so that was a massive jolt. That was like wait, what? Everything that I think that I know about my life or how this is going to unfold or the direction that this is going to go is all of a sudden now in question. And everything that was predictable is now all of a sudden not predictable. And maybe I won't hear my own voice, or maybe I won't be able to sing. And so all of a sudden now these fears around like expression or music or singing or all of a sudden didn't become very valid because I didn't have tomorrow guaranteed. And so that I went on like I'm still on this journey, right? Like, like you saw in the ceremony while I'm laying on the healing mat, and that's a whole story in itself. But like we have the shamans working on me and helping me clear the energy that's like fully clogged in my ears. But what that did is it took me on a journey of going, I'm not going to sleep on my potential anymore. I'm not going to just live a life based off of what other people think, other people want me to be, or like what other people think success is. I'm not going to live in this like 9 to 5 office job and just be miserable and live for the weekend anymore, because I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, but I could be dead by the end of the week. I don't know what's going to happen. So that was when I decided to book a travel ticket alone. I bought a guitar, and I always wanted to play the guitar, and I always wanted to sing, but I was always way too afraid to sing in front of people. And I was always got so nervous, and my voice would crack, and it was never on key, and I was like, eh. And I just said, you know what? If anybody asks me if I'm a musician while I'm carrying my brand new guitar, I'm going to say yes. I'm going to show up for the world as the version of myself that I've always wanted to be, because tomorrow's not guaranteed. And I went solo, and I traveled around the world, and I started playing music, and I learned 4 chords off of YouTube, and that's all I needed to know for like 10 songs. And I literally would sing Itsy Bitsy Spider for 5 hours on my own in my room, just like Itsy Bitsy Spider runs up the wall. But what I was doing was I was becoming 1% better, or 1% more aligned every single day of the version of myself that I wanted to become. And so this took me on adventures, and I fell in love, and I had my heart broken, and I learned music, and I sang, and my voice cracked, and I made a mistake, but then I got up and did it again. And I just started to live a life by design, as opposed to live a life by projection of what other people's version of success is. And that really is when my life began. When I quit my 9 to 5, when I went traveling, I became an artist, got my guitar, and I ended up in plant medicine ceremonies, and I got introduced to ayahuasca, and that blew the lid off of my reality of what I thought I knew this human experience was all about. And then I found about the gene keys, and it's a technology of astrology. And I just became so infatuated by peeling back the veil of the human experience and understanding mysticism and understanding medicine music and understanding the shamanic realms. And it just hasn't stopped since then. And I just love being a student of the mysteries of the universe.
It's really beautiful to hear. It's so relatable too, because it was the same for me when I quit my 9 to 5. It was probably one of the scariest things I had ever done, leaving everything I knew, the safety blanket that I had, to jump into this space I had no idea about. There was no money being put into my bank account every other week anymore. And while it was the scariest decision I think I've ever made, it was what allowed me to really find my true calling, my path, the things that light me up. And it takes great courage to do it. And it's not easy. It's hard. It took me 4 years to quit my corporate job. I wanted to quit for 4 years. It's a long time. And so what would you say to the people listening who are at that point? They're wanting to quit the job. They're wanting to take the leap, but they're afraid to do it. They hear the success stories of people like you or people like me who like took the leap, and it ended up being the most wild, most beautiful, most inspiring ride. Challenging at times, of course, right? We don't want to just sugarcoat it completely, but ultimately completely worth it. What do you say to those people to give them that little extra push, or what is it that they should know?
Yeah, so I wouldn't recommend just like listening to this podcast and be like, oh, hey, I'm super inspired, I'll quit my job tomorrow. Like, because what that can do, actually, it can catapult us into a realm of like, what the fuck have I done? I've bitten off more than I can chew, and now I'm kind of drowning in my own fear, right? Recognizing that it can be like a slow integration of, all right, what was I doing at the age of 5 before the world told me who I was supposed to be? Now, if I was to answer that question, I would say I was making art and I was putting on plays and performances for my family, and I was dancing all the time, and I was dressing up, and I was interviewing brilliant people and asking them amazing questions. And this is who I was before the world told me who I was supposed to be, before education system had me choose a major, like I had to like funnel it into one thing. And so how can I do more of that while I'm still in my other job? Like, how can I give myself 1 hour a day that just focuses on the things that light my heart on fire without having to put that I need to make money from it, without having to put so much pressure that this now needs to become the way that I pay my rent, or the way that I feed myself, or the way that I cover bills for my children. It's a big responsibility when you're a mother, or when you have children. It's not just a responsibility based off of your own needs, but how can I start to pay through my time, my presence, my attention to the universe, more of that I'm calling in? Because the universe can only give us that we're emanating. So if I'm emanating compromise, dread, not wanting to do what I'm doing, but doing it anyway, the universe can only bring us more of that energy. So more compromise, more work that's not soul fulfilling. Or if I'm now spending an hour every day in meditation, or an hour every day drawing, or an hour every day dancing in front of the mirror, what I'm doing is I'm saying to the universe, I'm actually calling in more of this energy. So before you know it, you're standing with some friends and they're like, hey, we have a dance class tonight. You want to come? Because a week ago, I spent 2 hours dancing in front of the mirror. Now, all of a sudden, that becomes a vibrational match for a conversation that says, hey, you want to come to a dance class? And then you're at the dance class, and all of a sudden, you meet this beautiful, handsome new man. And you're like, oh, who's this guy? And then you get into conversation. He's like, I'm leading a retreat and would love for you to come. Now, before you know it, you're in the middle of a retreat of people singing, and it's a medicine songwriting workshop. But this is in vibrational alignment with the song that you started writing, with the hour that you had outside of your job, which now became a vibrational match, you sitting in a circle and everybody singing and you writing your own medicine music, right? So if you can just do 1% every day of something that was the vibrational alignment with what your soul loves to do beyond what you think can make money, you'll be amazed at the doors and opportunities that will open up to you without having to just fully jump out of your job and be like, now I have so much pressure on anything that I do to have to make me money. How am I going to pay my bills? How the fuck am I going to make money from strumming Itsy Bitsy Spider on the guitar? Like, God. I'm just going to sit on the street with a hat out and be like, Itsy Bitsy Spider, can you give me some money to pay my rent?
Yeah, because I listened to this podcast and quit my job.
Like, oh, fuck it, I'm out. Like, this is awful advice. Eventually something will open up so like tantalizing, and there's still going to have to be a leap of faith at some point, but it's not going to be as much of like just cold turkey and then into a whole new timeline. But how can you recognize that your greatest currency is your attention? And if you place your attention for 1 hour on something that really nourishes you on a soul level, it will open up doors. But just be really mindful where you're sending your attention, because you can just reallocate the hour that you spend online scrolling on Instagram and just reallocate it towards journaling or writing or blogging or vlogging or making video, whatever. Like, just reallocate your attention.
And it's so funny to hear about the beginning stages of your singing. Guys, for everyone who's listening, Blue has one of the best voices I've ever heard. She sings like an angel in the ceremony with her guitar. It's funny to even hear you talk about you squeaking or, singing Itsy Bitsy Spider even, because it's like, it is proof. It's that little bit of attention, that little extra TLC into just doing what you love. And so much can be created from it, because now that's such a big part of your life.
It's such a huge part of my life. And I don't get afraid at all before I sing. I get super excited. Like, they asked me to sing, I'm going to sing now. Yay. But like back in the day, I was like, they asked me to sing. Oh my God. I'm like, literally like palms are sweaty, mom's spaghetti around, I'm sweaty already, I'm nervous. Like I'm like out here like And now it's just like, let's go slap in the booze. Because like, it's like, if you just continue to show up in that terrifies the shit out of you, eventually the grasp of fear doesn't have as much of a grip on you. And then all of a sudden it's like, it just becomes a prayer, not a performance. Like when I sing, I'm praying, I'm not performing. I don't need to be on a pedestal. I don't need to be on a stage higher than you guys. I don't need to be proving anything. There's, by the way, there's a lot of beauty in performance. But really what I'm referring to is that when you make an offering, whether it's through your voice, whether it's through a dance, it's not a performance of like, hey, look at me. It's a prayer of going, I'm sharing this because it's allowing me to connect to the divine. It's a very different energetic. So in the context of being in a ceremony, I'm not performing. If I'm sitting with ayahuasca and I'm like really feeling the medicine and I'm like wanting to connect with one of my diets, being Bob and Sanish, she's a master plant teacher and I work deeply with her. She's a beautiful flower in the Amazon jungle. And if I want to connect with her, one of the best ways to connect with her is through singing. So I sing Serenity to Bob and Sana, not to perform, but to activate the spirit of unconditional love, which is the spirit of Bob and Sana in this space as a prayer. And now all of a sudden it takes the pressure off me of having to be perfect or having to hit all of the right notes or having to sound a certain way, and allowing me to just recognize that just by singing has become medicine for myself. And if it becomes medicine for other people, that's a bonus. But really, this is my offering to the space from a place of facing my fear and doing it anyway.
Lou, I love you so much. I could listen to you for hours, and it's such a gift to have you here. The messages you share, the way you show up with unconditional love. It is such a gift to have you in my life. It is such a gift to have you here to share your message, to be able to make a ripple in, anyone's life who's listening to this podcast. Blue's potent. She's next level. It's just the beginning. She's barely scratched the surface and she's already done so much. But I just see it. I see such big things for you, and I know you're just scratching the surface. I want viewers to be able to find you. So where do they find you? How do they connect to you? What does that look like?
So I have a website, which is like the hub of all of the things. That's www.blueofearth.com. And then I am Blue of Earth on Instagram as well, BLU, no E. And that is like, I'm really active on Instagram, a little bit, maybe too much. Like I share a lot of what's like going on in between I have for the past decade. And so what I like to feel my Instagram is more of an online community of like-minded individuals, of a place of inspiration, of a place of empowerment, of a place of like we've just started a 40 days of devotion. It's like it's a challenge, a global movement that's happening, which is really, really, really special. And there's just, I post podcast snippets of the podcast every week on my Instagram. And then also you can check out my podcast, which is the Deja Blue podcast. And that is on YouTube and all podcasting platforms. And so it's we have videos and all of that good stuff, and have really, really phenomenal thought-provoking experts of their craft guests on the podcast. We cover a whole variety of different things, so all of the taboo, female empowerment, to pussy magic, to working with the elements, to remembering past lives, to interdimensional beings that communicate through us, to learning how to channel, to breath work, to biohacking, to all of the things, environmental issues, whatever. We really cover like a whole wide range of topics. So that's kind of like the places you can find me right now.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much for being here. Is there any last, words of wisdom, advice, anything you'd like to share with the listeners before we end our session here today?
To honor the nature of everything that we've discussed, I guess the last thing that I would say is don't sleep on your own potential. That this life, you came to this life, you're floating on a massive rock curling through space at millions of miles an hour, held into orbit by a giant ball of fire. Like at the end of the day, it is a pretty magical experience. We don't even really maybe remember why we chose to come here, but we're here inevitably. And so the invitation is to get out of the shoulds. Like anytime you've been told you should go to get a real job, or you should do this, or you should do that, that's basically somebody else's projection of their map of consciousness projected onto your experience. And so the invitation is to release the shoulds and to start listening to what lights you up from the inside out, because that's your greatest contribution to the collective healing, is when your joy, your celebration, your expression in your own unique lane is shared with others and inspires others. We'll have a more beautiful world to live in. But it requires us to transmute the shoulds and allow us to start listening to the whispers of our own hearts. So that's the invitation, is don't sleep on your own potential, and let's go all in. This is the year. Let's go. 2023, baby.
Let's do it. That was so beautifully said, Blue. Thank you so much for being here.
My absolute gift and pleasure. Such an honor to be the number 2 podcast. And by the way, anything I learned from childhood, from childhood rhymes is first the worst, second the best, third the one with the hairy chest, fourth the golden eagle. So first the worst, second the best. I'm just kidding. It's not a competition. It's not a competition. That was my childhood programming.
Not a competition. And side note, I can't even remember if I said this at the beginning, but I will share it again if I didn't. Blue is the inspiration behind this entire podcast starting. When I met her and I saw what she was doing, I was so inspired. And, you know, I was like, this is something I could totally see myself doing. And I was like picking Blue's brain and like asking her all the questions. And she was so just like, she would share it completely. She's like, yeah, this is how I did it. This is how I started. Gave me a couple seeds that, you know, I decided, you know, these seeds I want to water. I would like to do this. And so it's really cool, full circle, to be here and to actually have you as a guest on the podcast that you inspired me to start.
Yeah, I mean, this is just me showing up in support. You know, I believe in you. I believe in you.
Okay, well, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. This is Allie on Inside Out with Allie. Until next time, we will talk to you later.